Hi everyone, I'm Scott Schneider and welcome back to Stereo Niche. This week, I'm going to tackle the receiver. And it's a category I've somewhat been delaying, and not just receivers, but gear in general, because I've been trying to figure out how do I want to review them to make it relevant for you. I keep thinking about and what I've seen in other video reviews, and there's a lot of discussion about how they sound. And I don't think I can do that justice, because any sources and speakers that you will have on your end are certainly going to make it sound different. And I can't be sure that you can replicate that. From what I'm hearing to what you will hear, probably going to be different. So instead of trying to do that, what I thought I would do is focus on the features that I think are most relevant for anyone incorporating a vintage component into their system today. So I've put together a list of features with a point system for those features, and even some features will get bonus points. So what I want to do now is walk you through that, how I'm going to rate them and how I'm going to give them points, and explain to you why I'm going to give them points and why I'm going to give some features bonus points, so that you can see the relevancy and where I think the most of the importance lies. So let's dig into that now and see what the rating system is going to look like. So what I'm going through now is the feature set and specs that I'm going to rate each receiver going forward and assign points to that category. So starting with power, as the amount of power increases for that receiver, it will get more points. So the rationale here is that the higher watts and the more power you have, the more number of different speakers that you'll be able to utilize with that receiver. The bonus here is for if it's rated as a spec for 4 ohms. That's not as common across all receivers, but if it has a 4 ohm spec, that again opens the receiver up to incorporating a lot more speakers. So that's why it gets an additional 30 points if it has that spec. On the phonos, for each phono connection, it'll get 10 points, and if it has the capability of incorporating an MC cartridge, additional 20 points. Number of sources, I've combined the number of auxiliary and tape inputs to it, 10 points each. A balance control, pretty much every receiver has it. However, it's a necessary feature, so 5 points. A volume decibel mute. So this is the switch if it will say reduce the volume by 10 decibels or 20 decibels. 10 points for that. It's a very nice feature to have. Loudness button. Most receivers have them, but again, very nice feature to have if you're going to listen at low volume. So 5 points. Tone controls. If it has a tone defeat or off switch, 10 points for that feature, because it's nice to be able to turn that on and off without having to make adjustments. And then individual bass, mid, and treble controls, 5 points each. Power meters. There's no one I know of that doesn't like power meters. If it has power meters, that's an additional 20-point bonus. Pre-out, amp in function, if it has that flexibility, then an additional 20 points. A wood cabinet, same for power meters. Who doesn't like a wood cabinet? Which is typically an upgrade on many that have the separate cabinet, like a Marantz or a Macintosh. So an additional 20 points. AC switches, very nice to be able to connect your switches directly and be able to power them with one switch. So 10 points for each switched connection, and then for each unswitched AC outlet, 5 points. And then lastly, number of speaker sets that can be connected. Can you really ever have enough of them? So for each of them, I'm going to give 10 points because that's so much more flexibility. So those are the categories I'm going to rate each receiver across the board, and let's see how each one comes out with their totals, and then we'll do some comparisons as I do several reviews. Okay, so we've gone through the point system and how I plan to give a rating and a point level review of each of the receivers. So to kick it off, I thought I would start with a pretty special receiver, and that's the Pioneer SX-1010. And the reason I want to start with this receiver is because it's considered by many to be the receiver that kicked off the Watt Wars, the monster receiver wars of the 70s. So this receiver was from 1974, and it was manufactured from 74 through 76. And it came out and supposedly is the first receiver to have 100 watts at 8 ohm. And that was a pretty big deal. The largest integrated amp, now we're talking about just an amp only, an integrated amp, the largest one they had was, I think, 70 watts. So then they upped that and come out with a receiver that's 100 watts, and that was the largest at the time. And it was a big deal. It did not go unnoticed. No other brand was ready and had anything ready to go at that level for 2 or 3 years, 2 years at least. So made a big splash. And they didn't just put power into it. They put just about the kitchen sink and everything else. So it was really loaded for bear, if you will. And so I think most appropriate that we my review start off with this particular receiver. I think it's rather poignant. Before I get into the actual elements of it, the specific functionality, I did want to point out that the look of it, to me, I like this blue face. I know that a lot of people really are crazy about the silver face of Sansui and also of Pioneer. For me, they're a little busy, a little blingy, if you will. I don't think that's a word, but I just made it up. What I like about the blue face is that it's more subtle and it's, to me, more relaxing. And I'll compare it, I hate to compare it to another brand, but it actually reminds me a lot of Macintosh as well. It does have that just subtle, classy look to it. And I love the way it looks in the dark. It just has a nice glow. It doesn't stand out in a way. So for that reason, I really do like the interface on it. It has a great selection of buttons that are easy to access. They don't jump out at you. And then every other knob and switch has that solid feel. They really spared no cost when they built this back in the 70s. So I think it's a great receiver to start off with. I think it will probably score one of the higher ratings that we'll see. We'll get into that now. So let's talk about the score. I've already shared with you how I'm going to score it. So let's see, where did this Pioneer end up? So as far as watts are concerned, it's 100 watts. And so for 100 watts at 8 ohm, it gets 20 points. So kicking it off with a 20 points for them. And then the next important category, which I highlighted in the review earlier, is 4 ohm loads. It's rated and has the ability to handle 4 ohm speakers. Now, not multiple 4 ohm speakers simultaneously, by the way. There is a little chart on the back of the receiver, I believe, that talks about that. But if you're going to incorporate 4 ohm speakers, be aware that you can't run multiple at the same time, or at least understand what that means. So, but having the ability to do that is important, because many brands, like ADS come to mind, were 4 ohms. And if you didn't have a 4 ohm capability, you lost out on a lot of great speakers. ADS speakers are phenomenal. So nice to have that feature, and it's a bonus capability, which for that they get 30 more points. So number of speakers, it also hits a high mark here. Having the ability to hook up 3 sets of speakers wasn't very common. You see most of them have the ability to A/B 2 sets of speakers, but to add 3 sets was, I think, pretty much ahead of its time. So for that, 30 points, 3 sets of speakers. Phonos. You get 2 phonos on here as well. So you could set up 2 turntables to have sort of the ultimate setup and sources here. So it doesn't have MC, but it has 2 MM connections, another 20 points. Now, auxiliary and tape, 10 points each. 1 auxiliary, 2 tape. So 30 points. Keeps going. So on to tone control. So there is an on-off ability. You can defeat your tone controls, 10 points. Bass and treble. Now, I was torn here. There is the ability to fine tune the bass. There is some fine tuning adjustments there, and also on the treble, which probably gets you in somewhere it covers the mid range. But I didn't get points for that. I did leave it at 5 points each, and then balance control 5 points. Volume muting. It does have the ability to mute for a few decibels, and 10 points for that. Has a loudness button, so 5 points. And then on to the very important pre-outs, 20 points for that. It does have pre-out and amp in. Now what it doesn't have, and what I skipped over, is any power meters. It doesn't have a good power meter. That was about the only thing that it lacked as far as other receivers down the road will have. Wood cabinet. You know, I love this wood cabinet. It's much better incorporated than a lot of the earlier cabinets from other manufacturers, like Macintosh, for example. Macintosh, their cabinets were always the big bulky cabinet, and you slid your unit. Now, the benefit of it is that the units fit multiple cabinets, so there was a plus side to that. But this was different than the, I'll say, 60s era, where just about every company coming out of the tube era, they had the cabinet where you slid your component inside of it and screwed it in from the bottom. So this was a nice incorporation of a wood cabinet, just more seamless and well executed. So anyway, a wood cabinet, 20 points. And then lastly, the number of AC connections. Switchable has 1 switchable, 10 points, and then 2 unswitched, so 5 points each. So if you have been trying to keep up with all of the points there, the total is 230 points. I think that's going to be tough to beat. Even in a monster receiver, I think that might be a bit of a challenge in the way I've rated these. But we'll see how that goes. I think the majority of receivers will be probably around 150 to 180. And I haven't actually done this for any other receivers yet, but that's my uneducated guess at the moment. So we'll see how that irons out and that pans out. But 230 is probably going to be a benchmark that will be beaten by few receivers, I think. So I'm not aware of really any major issues with supporting this receiver as far as getting it fixed. Off the top of my head, I don't know of any unobtainium parts, so which is great. There are some receivers that have some componentry that can't be sourced, and so that would be a tough thing to have, and you needing to get it serviced. So I'm not aware of that here. Off the top of my head, I don't think getting to the pots is and the switches to give that periodic deoxit cleaning that is needed for just about any vintage gear at all. So really don't have anything negative to say. I think the SX-1010 is a pretty capable and awesome receiver. And based on the way I'm going to score things, it rates pretty high. So I hope you appreciate the review. Let me know how you like this format. It is, the way I plan to do it going forward. But again, if there's a category or some functionality I've missed, let me know, point that out in the comments. And, we'll see how it goes. I'm really looking forward to what your thoughts are on how I'm going to approach this. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.